Hello fourth year students. Today's lecture is about another literary figure from the Neoclassical period, Alexander Pope, and actually the literary criticism of this period is mainly characterized with his work as a critic. Maybe you have all studied Pope as a poet, but still we know him as a critic, as equally famous as a critic. Alexander Pope embodies in his writings 18th century thought and literary criticism. So when we speak about neoclassicism or the neoclassic period, we are talking about which period. It is the 18th century, القرن الثامن عشر. Unlike previous literary critics and theorists, Pope in his essay on criticism, this is the important work from which we can understand his idea about criticism. Actually, it is a poem, by the way. It's a poem, but its topic is about critics and criticism in general. It directly addresses the critic rather than the poet. This is something actually we can think of as new and significant. Maybe from the beginning of our study since the classical period, we notice that all the time the theory addresses the poet, how he should write poetry, for example. What are the rules? What are the themes? What kind of techniques the poet should use? But what about the critics? What are the things that the critic is responsible for? What are his duties as a critic? What he should be doing? According to Pope, the golden age of criticism is the classical age of Homer, Aristotle, Horace, and Longinus. If we think about this period, the classical period, and Horace particularly, his theories, his ideas, maybe it's one of the everlasting or longest influences in the history of literary criticism, since we all know Horace was let's say century BC، يعني احنا بنقول عليه قبل الميلاد. His influence started from that time, from his period, and it continued to the Neoclassical, which is the 18th. You know, this is a very long period. كلش فترة طويلة، يعني انتم متخيلين؟ يعني بدأ الميلاد، بدينا نحسب القرن الأول للميلاد إلى أن وصلنا القرن الثامن عشر ولا يزال تأثير هورس موجود. Okay, so they are the writers who discovered the rules and laws of harmonious and ordered nature. احنا هاي الفترة مال القرن الثامن عشر ليش نسميها Neoclassical? Because it renews the classical theories and ideas. It brings them back to the front and it renews them. It adds things to them, but the let's say the basic elements are the same, the basic forms. Why they bring such classical ideas again؟ يعني ليش هذا الهوس؟ ليش أجيب من الأفكار الكلاسيكية؟ ليش ما أطلع من عندي أفكار؟ Because they believe that these writers of the ancient times, whether we are talking about Horace, Homer, Longinus, any other, let's say all these authors in the classical period who are considered part of the literary canon, المتعارف على أنهم ذولا هم الكتاب القدماء العظام، يعتبر أنه ذولا جابوا خلينا نقول القمة، peak. They have reached the peak of all the kinds of rules or forms in literature. There is nothing better than what they have come up with. يعني هذا الاعتقاد أنه ذولا جابوا أفضل ما يمكن من ناحية النصوص، من ناحية الثيمز، من ناحية التكنيكس، من ناحية الفورمز خلينا نقول. So as a writer, if I want to write good literature, I should follow them. Okay, I shouldn't be original. I should not come up with my own forms and techniques. No, it's not allowed. Why? Because part of this is because in their time they found that actually there is a great deal of low literature which is not governed or controlled by certain rules. فحتى يخلقون نوع جديد من الأدب الجيد، فقاموا شنو؟ قالوا خلينا نخلي قواعد. هاي القواعد منين نجيبها؟ خلينا نجيبها من الكلاسيكال authors. دول كتبوا أحسن الأدب وأفضل التكنيكس هم استخدموها. هم يعتبرون the best imitators of nature. So let's follow them. Okay, this is the idea. It is the critic and the poet's task first to know and then to copy these authors and not nature. Because if you want to do what they did, so واحد يجي يقول خب خل أني هم يعني مثل ما هم أخذوا هاي الفرصة وكتبوا أدب يعتبر هو الأفضل. No, they imitated nature, they took their inspiration from nature. Why not we do the same? Okay. يقول لك لا أنت مو مستحيل تكون عندك هاي القدرة مثل الكتاب القدماء. أنت لازم ما تاخذ من الطبيعة مباشرة، لا تاخذ من الكتاب اللي هم سبقوك وتكلموا أو هم كانوا يحاكون الطبيعة. They imitate nature. You as an author, you are supposed to what? You are supposed to follow the other authors. Okay? Pope asserts that the chief requirement of a good poet is that the poet possess natural genius coupled with a knowledge of the classics. Just following the classics and then you are a good writer? No. First of all, you should have genius. You should have natural talent. You should be able to write since you have the talent to write. Okay? You are by nature a poet. أنت أصلا عندك موهبة. Then, what is the other thing that you should have? What is the other requirement? You should know the rules, the principles, the classical principles. You should have this knowledge. If you have these two requirements, then you are going to produce good poetry. Okay? So a knowledge of the classics and an understanding of the rules of poetry. Rules. هم شايفين الموضوع انه عبارة عن rules. قواعد. Natural genius and good breeding being established, the critic or the poet must then give heed, says Pope, to certain rules. To be a good critic or poet, one must follow the established traditions as defined by the ancients. What are these rules? Or what can these rules be about? مثلا يقول لك واحدة من الrules poetic diction. You should choose your words carefully. As a poet, you should know what kind of words you use in your poem. Not anything that comes up to your mind. Something that really serves the meaning of your text. Okay? هذا المقصود ب poetic diction. Number 2, the heroic couplet as a standard for verse. Now it comes to the form. What kind of forms you are supposed to follow as a poet? You are not free to write, for example, lyrical poem or a ballad. No, you are supposed to write in heroic couplet اللي هي هاي البيتين من الشعر اللي هم the meaning is complete and they rhyme with each other. Okay? هذا heroic couplet. يعني ذول الكلاسيكيين كانوا يكتبون heroic couplet. Then as poet or writer in the 18th century, I should also follow this. I should write in heroic couplet. If they use the epic form, then as a poet I should always consider what? Consider using the epic form in my writing. They use sonnets, I should be using sonnets. يعني هم حتى بالفورمز شنو شكل القصائد المتعارف عليه قبل كان أجي أنا كشاعر مطلوب مني أجيب نفس هذا الفورم وأيضا أستعمله. Okay? The personification of abstract ideas. You know this this way of revealing certain ideas or conveying certain messages by bringing abstract ideas and making them as characters talking. إذا تذكرون عندكم مثلا مسرحية فاوستس. You know this play in which there are certain scenes in which the sins, the 7 deadly sins, come and speak as if they are characters. تذكرون هاي الخطايا السبعة المميتة؟ They are not people, they are just abstract ideas. أفكار هي هاي مفاهيم مجردة يعني. بس كان هذا فد شي شائع قبل إنه جيب هاي الأفكار المجردة اعتبرها كأنما أو خليها جسدها كشخصيات وخليها تحكي. This is something that was common in the classical period. So what did the authors of the 18th century do? They brought these abstract ideas and they personified them. فيقول لهم انتوا أيضا امشوا على هذا الشيء. Emotional outbreaks and free verse must be avoided. Don't speak about personal feelings and personal experiences. Okay, it is not something that you can speak about in literature. It makes your literature low. هاي من الأشياء اللي تخلي الأدب من نوع المتدني، يعني مو من نوع الجيد. Okay, so and if you see after this, after the 18th century, what comes next is the opposite. هسه دول اللي بعدهم راح يجون اللي هم الرومانتيك بويتس، راح شي يسوون؟ راح يمشون عكس هذا الشي تماما. راح يحجون عن المشاعر، وراح يبطلون فكرة هاي البرسونيفيكيشن بعد ما يسووها، بالعكس يحجون عن أشخاص أو ناس حقيقيين. يستغنون عن هاي الفورمز مثلا هيرويك كوبلت، عن السونيت، عن لا، صار راح يصير عندنا lyrical poetry، الشعر الغنائي اللي هو شوي يعتبر حر أكثر. وبنفس بس البويتك ديكشن هي تبقى فد شيء العلاقة بالستايل. ممكن نشوف بعض الأحيان لا، الشاعر مو كان ما يستخدم كلمات أو يختار كلمات محددة، يتكلم بلغة طبيعية ordinary language used in daily life. راح تشوفون كل هاي الأمور راح تنقلب بعدين بالرومانتيك age. The critic's task is clear: to validate and maintain classical values in the ever-shifting winds of cultural change. So, as I told you, because of the changes, the cultural changes that were taking place, and also the kind of literature that was starting to appear, which was considered to be low literature, this was necessary, that the critic should establish certain rules and should force the authors and writers to follow these rules in order to avoid such kind of bad change, if we can call it. In effect, the critic becomes the custodian and the defender of good taste and cultural values. يقول لك الذوق، الذائقة العامة لازم اكو واحد يحافظ عليها. منو هذا اللي عنده، منو ممكن يحافظ على الذائقة العامة؟ هو الناقد. If we have a critic who is able to distinguish between good literature and bad literature, who can trace whether this author or that author or this poet or that poet follows the rule or not, and point to them, then it means that we are defending and we are preserving our culture from going down. Okay, هو هذا الهدف كان يعني. He advises both critic and poet to refrain from any biases and to follow ancient rules. Don't follow your own ideas. كانوا طبعا إذا تلاحظون هم ضد الأشياء personal, individual. As a critic or as a poet, you shouldn't follow your own judgment. You should go by rules. أكو فد rules عامة راح نتفق عليها وكل إحنا نمشي عليها. لا واحد يجيب أفكاره الخاصة أو الأصيلة ويريد يطبقها. Pope defines criticism as a true taste, which is a gift of nature. He wants criticism to be guided by those rules of old which learned Greece discovered in human nature. يعني كأنهم هذول وصلوا إلى قمة المعرفة فيما يخص الإنسان وطبيعة الإنسان، فإحنا بعد ما نقدر نزيد عليهم. We cannot add anything to what has been already discovered. All we can do is follow the rules. Okay? A critic is to be learned, disinterested. You should be learned. What does it mean? You have read extensively. You know all these kind of let's say all this kind of knowledge which is related to literature, the techniques, the poems, the let's say the style, the language. كل هاي الأمور تتعلق بالشعر. أنت تكون عندك معرفة دارسها، يعني تفهمها. disinterested يعني شنو هاي القصد بيها؟ أنه ما تتحيز. and free from all those ills that beset right judgment, such as pride, envy, caprice and the like. اوكي، يعني لا تكون منحاز، لا يكون عندك فكرة مسبقة عن النصوص او عن هاي الاشياء فيأثر عليك من تجي تريد تنتقد النص. He particularly condemns judgment by parts rather than by the whole. اوكي، هاي طبعا ايضا فكرة انه انت من تجي تريد تنتقد شيء عمل لازم تاخذه ككل. اوكي، don't take just parts of work and try to judge them. You should judge the whole. What does it do? What's the benefit? What's the purpose behind writing this whole work of literature? What does it add to the society? Okay, and basically that's all. And you notice actually that Alexander Pope, just like Dryden, just like Sir Philip Sidney, there are very, or let's say many similarities between them, but of course each one of them has expressed his own theory in a certain way. بس ما نقدر نقول هم متشابهين تماما، لا اكو تشابهات عامة باعتبارهم العصر اللي كانوا موجودين به إلى حد كبير هو يعني متقاربة، يعني أفكارهم متقاربة، لكن أكيد كل واحد عنده فد وجهة نظر من ناحية معينة تختلف عن الآخر. That's all concerning Alexander Pope. I hope it was clear for you, and I hope also to see you in other videos very soon. Thank you.